Shalom. All praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakor Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders at Great Millstone. Shalom to the hopeful elect. All right, so you have Marjorie Taylor Greene, all right, who used the term comply or die as it pertains to the digital ID and, more specifically, the digital currency that's coming to America, all right, which jumped out at me. Of course, as the scriptures say, I'm paraphrasing, I've seen the souls that were beheaded, for the witness of Yahweh Shai that, didn't worship the beast or didn't take the M.O.T.B. All right, so this will mainly be for the hopeful elect that will resist the M.O.T.B., but you also have people who will resist it as well, just not wanting the device within them, which the M.O.T.B. is the implantable device, the RFID chip. All right, but the comply or die statement that she made really jumped out at me because that's really gonna be what it is, man. All right, either you're gonna move forward with this new wave of, the new currency system that's gonna be implemented, which is digital currency. That digital currency being on a device that will be implanted within the people, or in the right hand or in the brain. As we've seen mass production of the brain implants, the brain chips being made in mass production by Neuralink this year. Okay, it's been spoken of that there's now a way where they shoot the implantable device in your arm through a syringe and it travels to the desired spot in the brain. And once again, we've already seen people with the implantable device in their hand. All right, but it's going to come a time where it's made mandatory, and this comply or die statement that Marjorie Taylor Greene made will, be true, man. All right, but I'm going to start with the AI overview. Marjorie Taylor Greene recently warned that Americans will have to quote-unquote comply or die due to perceived threats from a potential digital ID system and a central bank digital currency, CBDC. All right. This phrase was used in January 2026, according to social media posts, where she amplified warnings about potential government overreach related to the implementation of digital identification and currency. Greene has been a vocal critic of what she views as authoritarian government policies, previously referring to house mask mandates as communist, tyrannical, and authoritarian during her time in Congress. Greene announced her resignation from Congress effective January 5th, 2026, amid a public feud with Donald Trump. She also made headlines for expressing regret for her participation in toxic politics, which is all toxic politics. It's all a bunch of smoke screens and a bunch of bullshit. All right, but what the main point is the implementation of the digital currency, and this digital currency is going to be on the M.O.T.B. In Revelation 13:16, it says no man might buy or sell. All right, meaning if you don't have the M.O.T.B., which is the implantable device within you, you will not have a trade into the system. All right, and this is what this woman, is warning against. Now, get into the article on this is the Kaufman Chronicle, which basically just reiterates what the AI overview said. Marjorie Taylor Greene warns Americans will comply or die over digital ID and CBC threat. Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene sharply reacted this week to evolving federal crypto policy, warning that digital identity and currency changes could force Americans into a stark choice: comply or die. All right, whether that death be not having a trade into the system or actually physically being put to death, man. Because they're gonna label you a terrorist when you don't take this. All right. Green's comments came in response to a year-end policy op-ed shared by Representative Warren Davidson, outlining concerns about the U.S. stablecoin framework and digital currency trends. Davidson said flat or declining crypto markets and regulatory shifts including the 2025 Genius Act stablecoin framework, have eroded the industry's original uh, disintermediation use case. He says he argued that an account-based system favored by banks and new federal rules could lead to permission digital money tied to digital IDs. All right. So the digital ID just being a prelude or a precursor to the actual M.O.T.B, which will, be linked to the money, the trade into the system, whether you will be able to buy or sell or not. All right. Digital money tied to digital IDs. All right. A cosmetic illusion of freedom designed to enable more surveillance, coercion, and control. Green responded by branding the commentary a very important read and stressing her opposition to the Genius Act, which she said cedes regulatory authority to banks and opens avenues for CBDCs. It says you think you want to run a tax revolt. If the government puts digital ID in CBDCs and controls your keys, you won't be able to refuse to pay your taxes. You'll only be able to comply or die. Her stance highlights growing GOP concern over federal digital currency policy, digital identity systems, and self-custody rights for cryptocurrency holders. Analysts say debates over CBDCs and identity-linked money is likely to intensify in 2026 as regulators and lawmakers grapple with how to balance innovation, oversight, and civil liberties. Green's warning is the latest flashpoint in that broader fight. All right, so they're basically saying that the digital ID will be, or the digital currency will be linked to the digital ID. That's how you know the digital ID was just a prelude to the M.O.T.B, which is the implantable device. All right, and it's not just going to be a card on you, a digitized card or whatever. It's going to be implanted within you. As it says in Revelation 13:16. All right, charagma, an incision, something that's going to be planted within you. All right. So this talk of digital currency is getting stronger and stronger as we push forward, man. That's how you know we're getting closer and closer. All right. The brain chip, is being produced in a very high volume this year. All right, and there's more and more talk of this digital currency being tied to it. Not necessarily just the brain chip, the chip in your hand as well. These devices are being pushed in the forefront of the media now. All right, but I ain't gonna hold you. Hope that video was edifying. Shalom.